Gents and ladies, councillors, have your attention, please. Can we start the meeting? Okay. Good evening, all. I'm Councillor Paul Wilby, the Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this adjourned meeting of the committee. I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the council, but if anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now? Okay. I only ask this question not to stop you, but merely to ensure that members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. Okay. Moving on to item 1, sorry. Apologies for absence. We have Councillor Cox, Councillor Jeffries, Councillor Spooner, Councillor Summersgill, Councillor S. Thompson, Councillor Trubinski, and Councillor Dan Wilson. Okay. Did the subs want to go through, or are you happy for me to read it out rather than you actually? Yeah. Okay. So we have subs. We have Councillor Field for Councillor Harwood, items 9 and 13. Councillor Greenham for Councillor Jeffries, Councillor Miram for Councillor Summersgill, Councillor Oliver for Councillor Cox, Councillor J. Sands, Councillor S. Thompson. Is that all of you? Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Green. Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor J. Sands. Councillor. No. Councillor Harwood. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Okay. Moving on, item 3, visiting members. Do we have any visiting members that wish to speak? And can you please come forward and say what item you wish to speak on? Hello. Okay. Okay. Moving on then. Sorry, go, Councillor J. Sands. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Item 4, items withdrawn from the agenda. Are there any? No items to be withdrawn. Item 5, urgent items. Councillor should have always seen an urgent item as they came in today. Has everyone had a chance to read it? Councillors? Yeah, you happy with it? Okay. Okay, I intend to take any written and verbal updates as an urgent item as it contains further information related to matters to be considered at the meeting. Okay. Item 6, are there any disclosures by members and officers? Councillor Harwood. Okay, thank you, Councillor. Moving on then, item 7, disclosures of lobbying. So I will start on the left, work our way around, okay, and then get back to myself. So, Councillor Cleater, please start us off. Okay, item 8. I move that the items of the agenda be taken in public as proposed. Is that agreed? Okay, councillors, I've just been asked there about having a 5-minute adjournment while they sort the IT issues out. Is that agreed? Sorry for the members of the public. We'll re-adjourn in 5 minutes. One, two, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm on. One, two, 1, 2, hello. 1, 2, hello.
One, two, hello.
Fine.
Yeah.
Hello, one, two.
Okay, councillors, I believe the IT issue is now fixed and we can continue the meeting. Okay, so moving on then, item 9. I called upon Richard Timms, Principal Planning Officer, to introduce the item. Sorry, the legal officer just wants to come in quickly. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This application seeks permission for 180 flats, and I'll just run through the layout because I appreciate most councillors weren't at or on planning committee when this was deferred in March. So yeah, it's for 180 flats, 2 main buildings on the east of the site, Block A, fronting Sandling Road, 6 to 7 stories. Block B behind, which is sort of linked by a lower section, 8 to 9 stories. And Block C and D, and they're 7 to 8 stories. There's also around 1,800 square metres of flexible commercial floor space, and that's within the lower floors of Block A and B at the front. Area of public realm outside the commercial uses here, and then in the centre, public park, both for the residents who would live there and also open to the public during the day. So it was the application was deferred from committee in March for 3 reasons. They're set out in the report, but I'll briefly run through the applicant's response to them. So the first 2 were to do with massing and improving the open space. So essentially the response here, got the original layout and the amended layout, was basically to remove a central block E that was 3 stories. That obviously increases the open space in the middle, and that space would also be managed and maintained by Maidstone Borough Council, and that results in a reduction of 37 apartments, so it's down from 217 to 180. And for the reasons set out in the report, we consider that's a positive response to those deferral reasons and represents an improvement. I'll just go through some other images the applicants have provided. So this is a cross-section Sandling Road on the right in Victor House. So you can see the development, and then obviously in the centre there, formerly the 3-storey apartments have been removed. This is just an aerial image, sort of hovering above Maidstone East Station. So again, you can hopefully get an idea of the development in 3D with the open space in the middle, and that's just from the other side. Just a few photographs. So this is taken today. So the buildings have obviously since been demolished since the last committee. That's looking down where the existing and where the new access, or using the existing access down there. That's just from the other side with Maidstone East car park off to the left. This is from outside County Hall, Sessions House. You can just see the buildings beyond. This is just one of the applicant's CGIs. It's from a similar position, so there's the new development sort of imposed on there behind the trees. Just one from the car park of the station. It's an older photo, as you can see. It's got the old buildings there. and that's similar-ish position of development there. And then lastly, that's just from the from Fairmeadow, the A229. So the site's on the right. You can just see the previous building. Then just moving to the third and final deferral reason, this was essentially to see whether 100% affordable housing could be secured, but as was the case originally, the applicants reaffirmed their position that the provision of affordable housing is not possible, as set out in their viability evidence. That evidence predicts the scheme would be around minus £30 million in the red, and that's been accepted by consultants that we have used to review that evidence. The local plan review, affordable housing policy, places weight on whether schemes are viable or not, and it's introduced value zones. The site's in what's called the low value zone, where the policy can accept no affordable housing where that's evidenced. Even though that policy can allow no affordable housing, this does still weigh against the development, but we consider the benefits of regenerating a site which we think detracts from the local area with a quality development, the provision of a larger area of public open space, and the general public benefits outweigh the lack of affordable housing.
Okay, just a minute. I've got something coming in. Oh, it's in. I'm in now.
For information purposes, the applicant said they intend to apply for Homes England funding, and that can be used to provide affordable housing on schemes that aren't viable. To provide, in this case, they're looking to apply for funding for at least 30% if permission was granted. But as an award of funding is not guaranteed, we can't give that any weight in a decision. That's purely for information. So in conclusion, the sites allocated in the local plan for housing and commercial uses, we consider the proposals are in accordance with that allocation, and the changes to the scheme on the back of the deferral are considered to respond to that appropriately and actually result in an approved scheme, and permission is therefore recommended once more. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Just a couple of detailed points. We consider that the mass of Block B is entirely appropriate because, you know, going back to first principles in terms of urban design, one would expect Block A to be of a certain mass because it's the frontage block. But another frontage has been created by the proposal for a public park. So I think that Block B works in terms of its mass because of the new space it addresses. So I think the ratio is a happy one, the vertical to horizontal. And then lastly, as Richard stated on viability, the applicant has submitted a viability assessment that's been on the website, as is required by national guidance. So everybody's had a chance to look at the viability assessment. And I'd just like to stress that the National Planning Policy Framework, so national policy, it states inter alia in paragraph 58 that the weight to be given to a viability assessment is a matter for the decision maker, so you guys. But as Richard has pointed out, in Maidstone, in a very recently adopted development plan, Maidstone has decided to identify roughly half of the urban area, which this is obviously within, as a low value zone. So the local interpretation of viability is that it is a strong material planning consideration, and the applicant has clearly demonstrated and has been verified by independent consultants that the scheme, as Richard said, is heavily in the red. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, officers. Okay, for the applicant now, can I have Phil Morris?
Good evening, Chair and members, and thank you for allowing me to speak in support of this application. My name is Philip Morris. I'm the Head of New Business at Maidstone for Maidstone Borough Council, responsible for delivery of the Council House Building Programme, and have been leading on this application. The site has been earmarked for development since first acquiring it jointly with KCC in 2015. With the site not coming forwards for a number of reasons, NBC acquired KCC shares to take full ownership in 2022. The site has been somewhat of a blight to the area and wider town centre, suffering from continuous antisocial issues with a number of incidents happening over the years, including arson. The site is a key site in the delivery of the council's house building programme due to the multiple benefits, housing, healthcare facilities, open space provision the proposed scheme will offer, making the redevelopment a key milestone in bringing forwards a significant site forming part of the town centre strategy. We have a letter of intent from the NHS to occupy the majority of the commercial space at ground floor level to be used for the provision of much needed healthcare services. Bringing this site forwards is integral to the council's house building programme, as it demonstrates the council can really affect change and deliver where others have not been able to. These units will be the first units of significant number to have gone through the planning system, with the council acting as the developer. The site has an allocation in the local plan and local plan review, and is identified as a brownfield town centre site that can support mixed-use development, thus taking pressure off other sites outside of the town centre that are required to deliver housing. The site is mainly demolished and cleared, and allowing the redevelopment to be brought forwards quickly. The proposed design is of an excellent quality, according with the Future Home Standards, Nationally Described Space Standards, and Maidstone Building for Life 12, as well as providing large increase in biodiversity net gain. Following feedback from the committee previously, we have reduced the number of apartments by 37 units, some 17% reduction, and now includes a substantially larger public park to be owned and maintained by the council. Whilst viability is such that planning permission will be on the basis of zero affordable housing under the terms of that permission, the applicant will be entering into a memorandum of understanding to secure social housing grant from Homes England to deliver at least 30% accommodation as affordable through this mechanism. This does not form part of our application, and as you heard this evening, shouldn't form any part of your decision-making deliberations this evening. It is common knowledge, however, that units secured under a Section 106 agreement or planning condition are not eligible for Homes England grant funding, and a number of registered providers and other councils are able to deliver affordable homes on sites such as this with help from Homes England funding via this mechanism. The council will be going above and beyond our legal requirements by entering into a separate agreement to deliver this affordable housing on site, and we are legally committed to make this application to Homes England to do so. The council is an investment partner with Homes England and has secured nearly £13 million worth of grant funding from them this year to deliver various other viability challenge sites as affordable housing. So we are confident that we'll be able to deliver this one. Thank you.
Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. As Phil Morris, the case officer, set out, this revised scheme being represented to you this evening has been amended following the Planning Committee's earlier consideration of the larger scheme of 217 units submitted towards the end of last year. Following the committee's deferral in March, the applicant has been working hard with planning officers in seeking to address the concerns raised. These proposals would deliver a range of public benefits which support the approval of the application, including the delivery of 180 new homes, assisting in meeting the pressing known need for significant new housing within the town centre, and positively contributing towards maintaining the council's housing land supply on a site which is identified to be delivering within the next 5 years. Provision of new flexible commercial floor space, which could be used for a variety of uses, including for retail provision and the new healthcare services. And we've been speaking to the NHS about moving into that, and they're very positive about that, an area, another pressing need in that area, which will create a positive, active street frontage along Sandling Road. And also a significant increase in open space in the area, with provision of a public park to be managed and maintained by the council, increasing the biodiversity net gain provision in excess of approximately 90% in habitat units above the existing baseline requirement of 20% set by the council. Should committee members be minded to grant permission, officers would be very happy to work with members to finesse the areas of soft landscaping and children's play equipment through a planning condition. The application proposals would secure an exemplary design, which is the result of a coordinated multidisciplinary approach. The resulting architectural style responds positively to the local context, whilst creating a new sense of place and delivering a high-quality public realm. This revised scheme has been through extensive further discussions with officers and feedback from members, which has positively shaped the proposal before you this evening. In terms of design, the applicant has removed Block E, which was a 3-storey building, reducing the overall mass of the scheme with a reduction of 37 units, and which has helped with the creation of a much larger gap between Block C, D and Block B. This has also enabled the application to create a much larger central park open space area, which is almost doubled in size from the previous application. The proposals wholly achieve the aspirations of the NPPF and the recently adopted local plan review in making effective use of brownfield land and promoting positive regeneration in a town centre location. So I therefore support the application to bring forward this site after nearly 10 years of exploring development options, and look forward to seeing the scheme finally delivering many public benefits and much needed regeneration of a town centre site. We therefore respectfully ask members to support the officer's recommendation and to approve the application, which would allow us to bring forward much needed regeneration of a vacant site. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'll now open the floor. Isn't this High Street yours? Yep. So, as a ward councillor, do you want to go first? Okay, to the other side, is it? Okay. There we go. I learned something new today. So, okay, who wants to go? Councillor Field.
I have a handful of points. Would you like me to go through them? So, firstly, around the hard standing around the new park. Obviously, it's good to see that it's a larger amenity space, but the extent of hard standing is still rather large, and I think that we should invite the possibility of reducing the hard standing further.
I believe on that point, Councillor Field, there is a note in the recommendations about that being delegated to officers to deal with. Okay. Yeah.
To reduce
to reduce the hard standing. Okay.
Thank you. Secondly, on the planting on the site, despite the notes mentioning native vegetation, there are non-native invasive plants listed. I wonder if ward councillors could be consulted at the appropriate point in the development on the nature of vegetation.
That is acceptable.
Yeah. So the next point I'd like to raise relates to the water spout feature. I understand the potential attractiveness of such a feature, but I question the sustainability of the feature once the development is occupied, and in terms of our aspirations around environmental sustainability, given the extent to which Maidstone is water stressed, whether a feature pumping water continually is appropriate and should perhaps be reconsidered.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Field. I think on that one, again, if you're happy to delegate that to officers, we can review that at the time with the ward members.
Thank you. I think that will be satisfactory. I do have, I think, one or two minor additional points. So, since water naturally collects in the meadow area, could a pocket wetland habitat be supported?
I think, as you kind of said, so well, it's been laid out in the report. Obviously, the officers, if we give them delegated authority, will look about trying to achieve that. Obviously, there are limitations with obviously the site itself.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. And finally, with the removal of Block E, whether there could be any consideration of further small wins to improve sight lines and the appearance to this entrance to the town centre.
Sorry, Councillor Field, can you say that again? The officers didn't hear. Neither did I.
Certainly. With the removal of Block E, are there any small wins that we consider could be made to improve sight lines and the appearance to this entrance to the town centre?
Councillor Field, are you talking about visible displays? Or
Yes.
the visibility displays just comply with the standards?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Field. Councillor Springett.
Thank you. Councillor Field, you sound like you've eaten Mr Harwood's manual, I'm afraid. I think considering this was in the local plan for approximately 500 dwellings, and we've got it down to 180, we've got an open space in there. I think it's been looked at quite closely. I have no objections and I'm happy to propose approval as per the papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Springett. Is that with the amendments suggested by Councillor Field? Okay, I'm happy to second that. Okay, Councillor Greenwood.
There's one point I just wanted to raise, and it was on page 18 under the conditions, point number 20. It was regarding the play equipment. It said to cater for a range of ages, and I felt we've missed a trick here, because what if we had to cater for a range of ages and needs, bearing in mind we're going to have obviously potentially a health centre on site, so this could be accessed by children and young adults of all abilities.
Okay, Councillor, my recommendation on that is that we, again, delegate that to officers, obviously, to work with the ward councillors. Yeah, and we're at the needs to the conditions. Okay, so, Paddy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second Councillor Springett's proposal if everyone finished speaking.
Hey, Councillor, I'd already seconded it, but okay. Anybody else before we go to the vote? No? Oh.
You know, just very quickly, no, I just want to say I'm very impressed with how this has come back, actually, considering the fact that it seems to be quite difficult to get these sort of changes made. That's quite a significant change compared to the original plan. So I'd just like to say well done to everyone involved, because looking at the outline of this, it looks pretty tight. So yeah, that's well done. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. Okay, so we're moving on the proposed papers with the amendments from Councillor Field and Councillor Greenan. Okay. Councillor Clear.
Just so we confirm that an application will be made for Homes England funding if this planning application, I'd like that minuted, because that's my only concern about this. But I know it's a stupid system we have where we have to get planning permission and then apply for the money. Someone needs to change it somewhere.
I agree, and next time you speak to the higher ups, please do pass it on. But but just to reiterate, we can put no weight on that. Yeah. Okay. So okay, councillors. So we're going to go to the vote. All in favour? And that is unanimous. That is approved. Thank you, councillors. Okay, moving on then. Yeah. Okay, councillors. Yeah, nice echo there. Councillor Cleater. Okay, so we're going to move on. Sorry, I've lost my place. on one of them. Okay. Item 13, I call upon Will Fletcher, Senior Plan Officer, to introduce the report.
Thank you. So the application tonight is at Vinters Park Crematorium. There's 3 elements to the proposal: covered walkways around the main buildings of the site, improvement works around a pond and hard standing, and a conversion of an existing building on site to a cafe. It was reported to committee in July, but it was deferred in order to allow for clarification and a more thorough assessment of the development's impact upon ancient woodland to the north of the application site, specifically relating to the storage building to be converted. The storage building itself is within 15 metres of the ancient woodland buffer, or is within the 15-metre ancient woodland buffer zone and approximately 2.5 metres from the ancient woodland itself. So the committee report details the government guidance and considerations for development affecting ancient woodland, and as is detailed within the report, not all of these are relevant. So I'll just quickly go through sort of the setting. This is the building to be converted. First, almost all of the area to the front and sides of the building is hard surfacing and sort of significantly compacted earth. So it's likely that a lot of the damage to the soils has already taken place. It is a working area and has a storage container. Parked vehicles, pallets, and other paraphernalia is discarded and stored in this area. So it's not assessed that the conversion of the building or introducing seating in this area is likely to cause more harm than the current situation. There would be vibrations, noise, light pollution, dust, etc. from the existing use. So it's not assessed that the conversion of the building to a cafe and a florist would result in such a significant exacerbation of any existing impacts that harmful impacts to the ancient woodland and sort of the soils around it, etc. would occur. No objections around landscape and tree consultees have been received to the proposal in terms of the works to the trees to the north of the building. That's sort of what's overhanging the building here, and the tree on the left side of the screen here would also be removed as part of the application. So no objections to those works. Concerns were raised of users of the site entering the ancient woodland. There is significant ground cover around the area, which does make access difficult. The vegetation around the area is also very dense, but nevertheless there are some openings where in theory the woodland can be accessed. There are portions of hard standing around the building and it is constrained in terms of the space available. So it's assessed that the best way to address this would be by condition 7, which is detailed in the officer report, which requires the applicant to establish a post and wire fence sited very tightly around the building, and the planting of shade adaptable plants where we can prevent access. There were also some concerns raised last time about the hard standing area and any organisms in the pond. There are some fish in the pond. They will be remaining whilst the works take place around them. So on the basis of the officer report, we're recommending permission. Thank you.
Okay, we have no speakers on this, so straight to councillors. Councillor Nagy.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for the review plan here that we've received. Looking through it, I'm very happy with the amendments that have been made, especially with 6.09. The way that the work is going to be supervised, the very minimal interaction with the ancient woodland there. All of that looks superb. And again, looking at the way that the amendments have been for the pond and the covering that runs between the two sections, as far as I can see, that's all in line and has addressed most of the issues that we addressed the issues that were raised previously. I'd only apologise that this didn't go through initially, but we did have to look at that condition with the woodland. But I think looking at the section 6 there, that has been sufficiently handled. And again, I'd just like to thank the officers for bringing back such a detailed report on that. As far as I'm concerned, I'd like to say that I'd be happy to support this as it currently stands. So yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, so you're moving as per the papers. Okay, and you're second.
Happy to second as per the papers.
Do you wish to speak, or do you? Does anyone else want to speak on this? No. Okay, in that case, we'll go to the vote. All in favour? Unanimous. That is approved. Okay, if we're just going to wait a couple of minutes for the other councillors to come back in. Okay, councillors, just for the video recording, we have now Councillor Sams and Councillor Jeffries taking their seats, and Councillor Harwood. Oh, it's not Councillor Cox. Sorry, I read your nameplate there. Sorry, Councillor. As you've just joined the meeting, Councillor Harwood, you've already done your lobbying and interest. Councillor Jeffries.
Yeah, I've been lobbied on. Do you want items on the adjourned agenda, number 9, 10, and 12?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. I've been lobbied on number 9, number 11, number 12, and number 13 on the new agenda.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay, moving on then. So, the Orchard Copper Lane. This is a starred item. So, is anyone mindful? Okay. Jesus. Apologies, can you introduce the item?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Just before I introduce the application properly, I just want to verbally amend condition 3. It does refer to no more than 2 pitches on the site. That should be 7 pitches, which is what the application is for. So moving on, the existing site, known as the Orchard, benefits from lawful permission for 5 mobile homes. And this current application seeks to approve the stationing of 7 mobile homes on land in front of this site whilst using the same access. The site is within the countryside, but not within flood zones 2 or 3, and the application has been reported to committee at the request of Councillor Russell. This is currently the site, sort of sweeping across from Copper Lane. This is from the access looking north, with the site sort of behind us on the right. This is looking along the site with its access here, and this is the mobiles currently. And this is the southern boundary of the site with the public footpath running off away from Copper Lane. This is the sort of general feel of the mobile homes, and this is the layout. So the layout refers to the red outline, obviously, with the 3 mobiles behind the existing barn, and then the 4 mobiles situated back from this landscape buffer to be planted. The orchard itself relates to these 5 mobiles here, but as you can see, they both use the same access. The submission is necessary to maintain a close-knit and growing family, and as the report sets out, the scheme is read in the context of surrounding development and does not result in more built form encroaching into undeveloped countryside. Public views of the site are also limited at short range from Copper Lane and the public footpath to the south of the site, with any longer views likely to be glimpses of the development given the topography of the area and the surrounding established buildings and landscaping. In addition to this, the proposed landscaping buffers along the southern and western boundaries of the site would help to further screen the development from public view in the long term. On this basis, it is considered that the development does not appear visually dominant or incongruous within the landscape. In policy terms, policy HOU8 allows for windfall gypsy accommodation in the countryside, provided certain criteria are met. And at this time, the council is unable to demonstrate an up-to-date 5-year supply of deliverable sites. Relevant to this application, there is no objection in terms of gypsy status. The site sits in front of an existing lawful site, and in accordance with policy HOU8, the harm caused to the landscape and rural character of the area is not considered to be significant. The application is also considered to be acceptable in all other planning respects, and the development, when considered on its own or cumulatively with other lawful gypsy sites in the vicinity, is not unacceptable. On this basis, a recommendation of approval is made, subject to the recommended conditions and the amendment to condition 3. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This is one field. This is an arbitrary line that's been drawn on the map here. You can see why would you have a line through an access road. So I do think this, whilst it is a separate application, needs to be considered for visual impact as the whole field. You can see on your drawings on page 201 that boundary is arbitrary. Whilst I know the right-hand side of the field is from a previous application, there were conditions attached to that application, and some of them have not been complied with, and there's currently enforcement going on that side, particularly the landscaping conditions. There has been hedging not done. Hedging's been removed from some of the site and wooden fencing installed in the countryside. We have got gypsy and traveller sites which are really beautifully laid out with excellent landscaping, and I just think this hasn't been demonstrated either in the prior permission or this one. There's car workshops that are registered at this address, and there are far more caravans than have been applied for, both in the previous application and in this one. I believe there's now 17 caravans on site. So I would really like that we would defer the application so that members can actually check what are the number of caravans, and can we get the application to make sure that we have either permitted or not permitted the right amount on that site, because I do think that's key, because obviously we're progressively putting more on in the area. My thing that I'd also like to refer to at the bottom of the site on page 199, when Copper Lane joins to Albion Road, which you can't see because it's just on the left-hand side there, there's a main application for 100 odd houses on this site that has just been refused, and the reasons for refusal that we're about to defend an appeal are due to the absence, one of them, due to the absence of safe pedestrian and cycle access on Albion Road to access the services within the village of Marden, the residents are likely to be reliant on the private motor vehicle, which is contrary to policies SS1, SP17, SP23, DM1 of the Maidstone Local Plan, and policy IN2 of the Marden Neighbourhood Plan, MPPF, and the objectives of Active Travel England. So I guess my question for the committee is, if we're about to go to appeal on a site literally just opposite, and that's one of the grounds, why would we consider this any differently? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Harwood, I will bring you in, but on the grounds of that and actually going over what this is retrospective plan admission and these things that I think the council has highlighted, I am going to recommend that we probably do move this to a deferred item. Okay, but I have got to bring in the applicant first of all. Okay, he is here. Sorry.
Try your microphone. Mic's on. Thank you. Firstly, I think it's fair to say that the officer's report is very detailed and all planning issues have been carefully considered, and that has resulted in a positive recommendation. I just wanted to touch on a couple of issues for clarification. As members will know, planning permission was granted back in December 2018 for a change of use of the site to provide 5 mobile homes and 5 touring caravans. The consent was given on the basis that these units were occupied solely by gypsy travellers. These units are still on the site and are shown on the submitted drawings. The previous application also included a supporting statement that confirmed the status of the family being gypsy traveller origin. Over the last 6 years, the family has expanded and there is a need to provide additional accommodation. In terms of planning policy, it's noted very importantly that the current local plan identifies that there is a significant shortfall for gypsy traveller pitches within the borough. The current application will make a very reasonable contribution towards achieving that shortfall. The proposals themselves request retrospective permission for the retention of the 7 mobile homes for gypsy traveller accommodation, plus ancillary car parking facilities and landscaping enhancements. As mentioned, over the last 5 years, the family has expanded and other family members who also have gypsy traveller status have joined the group, with further mobile homes located on the site. There is ample space for the site to provide these additional homes, together with individual parking spaces for each unit, as well as general bin and cycle storage facilities. The proposals also include substantial new planting of trees and hedgerows to ensure that we provide an effective natural screening from the low-profile mobile homes to the public highways and the surrounding area in general. This will reduce any undue impact within this rural setting. A full specification of the trees and hedges that intend to be planted and their location is shown on the submitted drawing, and this will be covered by a suitably worded planning condition, including biodiversity enhancements. The officer's committee report firmly supports the application and agrees with the proposals for this site. I sincerely hope that members will be able to support the officer's recommendation and grant approval this evening. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hawkins. The officer just quickly wants to come back. Or did?
Yes, thank you. With regards to enforcement, if we look at the relevant planning history in the report, it confirms that at the last site visit by an enforcement officer, it did match the number of caravans for the 2018 permission. Whilst one mobile was slightly outside the red line, this matter is not considered expedient to formally pursue. This application is only dealing with the red outline and not the site on to the east. And I would say that the recommended conditions will restrict the number of caravans within the application site. And it should be pointed out that it has been negotiated to have a nearly some 35-metre buffer from the road, with the caravans moved behind that, and a 10-metre plus buffer of native landscaping to the south as well, to give that extra protection when approaching from Copper Lane and when viewing the site from the immediate public footpath. In terms of sustainability, the principle for G&T sites has already been accepted given the existing lawful site. I think that's the points I wanted to make.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. For anybody who knows Copper Lane, it's quite out of the way, but the
red line part of the site is very well landscaped. The really big, thick old hedges around there. Where the adjacent site is more exposed out in the open field. But I think actually we can regularise the situation better by permitting, as per the papers, because we've got quite a tough landscaping scheme on there. But what I would suggest is that we put the informative on we usually do around the landscape team working with the applicant, just to make sure that we've kind of dotted the I's and crossed the T's on the landscaping and its maintenance going forward, which I think is often the critical point where it goes in, but then it's overzealously managed or we lose it. With cognizant of the adjoining site and some of the ongoing kind of enforcement issues, I am quite happy that we do grant permission as per the papers, because I think it will enable a betterment. Thank you.
Okay. I've Councillor Cleaver, but do I have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Nagy, do you want to talk now, or do you want to hold your?
Sorry, nothing major. I just did want to highlight the entrance to the road. Like I said, it is quite out of the way and it is a country road, but again, that does bring its own dangers with it. If this is a family site, and quite a large one at that, I'm just wondering, is there anything we might be able to look at making that entrance as safe as possible and the surrounding area on it? Because naturally, there does seem to be quite a covered lane. Have we got the photos for that, just out of interest? That's the one. That's the main entrance site, is it? Yeah, I just think that considering that as the entrance to the site, if there is anything we can do to just improve the safety of it, like I said, if there is no walkway around the surrounding area, at least if there are vehicles coming up, we can just make that as safe as possible for the residents that are going to be using that site, even if it is just an entranceway.
Okay, I think we could put an informative on it, but I don't think there's any improvement we can actually make to the actual entrance at all at the moment on what's on the plans at the moment. Councillor Nagy. Okay, Councillor Cleaver.
Yeah, mine's more just commenting, wanting some more information. I've listened to what Councillor Russell said regarding previous conditions not being done. So I know Councillor Harwood said it's about the adjacent side. I suppose for me, are the applicants for this side the same people who have got the other side? Because I've got absolutely no problem having a gypsy traveller site. That's absolutely fine. What I do have issues with is when planning puts conditions down and they're ignored. And I suppose my query is, who's responsible for the conditions that haven't been met that Councillor Russell is talking about, and is it the same people? In which case, are these conditions going to be applied? So that's my only question. I'm just trying to get some clarity around that, because I think if we have planning conditions, they need to be enforced, they need to be there, and I need to know that if I'm going to vote for this, which I'm minded to do, if all those conditions are met, if we're given planning permission and there's a history of not conforming to planning conditions, then that might make me query how I'm going to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No, I have the same question. So rather than me waffle on, I'll let the Councillor come back.
Yes, so paragraph 202 confirms that the mobile homes are for the sort of growing children of the applicant. So the family is just expanding and they need their own space. And we have the site development condition that I think is very stringent in terms of securing the details we want to see for the scheme. If that's not enforced, or if they don't do that within the time, the permission falls away.
I think what the Councillor was asking, so the previous site, and I think we were at planning committee when the previous site came forward anyhow, are the conditions that haven't been upheld, was the whole site in the area, Have they upheld everything on that previous plan application, or are there issues still outstanding?
I believe the enforcement investigation is pending the outcome of this application.
So it's ongoing at the moment. So yes, is a simple answer. Yeah. I'll take Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I think there is one or two anomalies on this application, and I genuinely think it would be in the best interest of the applicant and the planning committee if this matter was deferred for a period of time, in order that these T's can be crossed and I's dotted, and more clarity. And I would be happy to support it in the future. Thank you.
Anybody else want to come in? Councillor Nagy.
So just very quickly on the point, I appreciate that. Obviously, it may be similar families, but if this is the application for the expanded family of the current residents, I don't think we should attribute the sins of the family beforehand on the previous site and the new ones. Just oh yeah, unnecessary. But yeah, it's fine. That's it.
Councillor Spring.
Thank you. I think there is an anomaly for numbers. We're hearing 11 and then I'm hearing 17. We've got a red line drawn across the middle of the site. So this application is for 7 vans. And yet, is it not all part of the original site that's got 10 on it? So I think we need a bit of clarification. Is this one site with 17 vans in total? Or is it 2 sites with 10 on one and 7 on the other? And I know it's really silly, and we ought to clarify this. That's my first point. And my second point, we're hearing that conditions haven't been complied with on the original site. We don't have a very good process for checking up on conditions. And it tends to be when a resident somewhere reports to say that hasn't been done. And I appreciate it will be more than the job for one person, but I wish we could have a diary note somewhere in 6 months' time to say, actually, on every planning application, not just this one, on every planning application, 6 months down the line, someone goes out and has a look and sees if all the conditions have been complied with. So it isn't necessarily relevant to this one, and it's something for the planning team to take away. I think we need a conditions compliance team that do this on every application from 200 houses down to 1. Thank you.
I think we'd all like that, to tell you the truth. I think we've all got areas in our thing with planning conditions still outstanding. However, I will bring the officer back in to clarify the boundaries.
So the plan I'm showing there is the 2018 permission, which I tried to highlight in paragraph 101 of the report by sort of hatching the area. That's the 2018 permission, and that's what's got permission for 5 mobile homes. The current application is the red outline to the front of the site, and that is for 7 mobile homes. In terms of the conditions, we do have that, I'll mention it again, the site development scheme condition. That does say within 3 months, if details haven't been submitted and approved, etc., the permission lapses, and that condition is sort of tracked.
Yeah, Councillor Spring.
I'm having a trouble with my numbers tonight. So we've got 5 mobile homes, but we've probably got 10 vans or 10 mobile homes, because we've got 5 static and 5 tourers. So we've now got 10 on the original site. We've now got 7 on the other site. Are they going to have touring vans with them as well to make 14? I'm just a little bit confused with the numbers. So actually, I would support your suggestion of a deferral, just to clarify exactly how many vans, mobile homes, touring static we have. I'm not against it. I just think we need to be clear right from the outset what's there. Thank you.
Okay, so we actually do have a proposal in a second, so let's kind of gone past the deferral. I think almost past the deferral kind of thing. We've had quite a discussion about it as well, to truth, Councillor Springett. I think we are a bit of, I will bring in Councillor Cox in a minute. I think we are a bit of a rock and hard place with this. Obviously, there's an enforcement outstanding on the other side. We have to take this application on its own merits, not the other side. I agree with you, Councillor Cleater. It's not ideal. That is the correct policy and the way we should be deciding this item. So I think with the deferral, I don't think it is a case that we can actually go to deferral now. I think we've got to propose a seconder. I'm going to have Councillor Cox, and then I'm going to go to the vote so we can actually wrap this up. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate a point I made on a previous planning committee that I'm not a fan of retrospective applications, especially where there's been opportunity for, and there's genuine awareness from the applicants that they need planning application. So for me, with the enforcement concerns as well, I think deferring it and actually giving the opportunity for those conditions to be met is the right outcome.
Okay, complete swing. So, Paddy, you proposed it, you seconded it. Councillor?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this up and get this deferring. Okay, so sub-motion. Okay, so all in favour of deferring? Okay, those against? Okay, those abstaining? And one abstention. Okay, that is deferred. Moving on. I call upon Francis and Rebecca to introduce the item. Okay. Could I have the Duncan Ellsworth? Oh, sorry, Ian Simmons. Sorry. Just one in the middle, one little speech bubble.
The George Public House was always viable as a pub. It closed for deeply personal and unfortunate circumstances, not just COVID related. So the original plans submitted by the new owners were carefully examined by us, the local residents, and supported or objected to on the basis of what was presented then. Those plans preserved the basic layout of the ground floor. The farm shop was left as you face it from the road, around the front, and the restaurant area was to the right, which made perfect sense because it gave access to what was then a wonderful garden. Later, we were shocked to find out that the owner had removed every single feature of the downstairs and left an empty box to maximize retail space. The stairs were gone, there was no farm shop and no restaurant. When challenged, the applicant has put in retrospective plans to allow him to ignore the original ones completely. I'm objecting to this application on the following grounds. One, the revised plans bear no relation to what was originally approved and commented on. Much has been destroyed of the internal fabric of the building. Two, the area proposed for the cafe is too small and just a token offering. Three, the cafe is logically on the wrong side. Four, no mention at all has been made of the garden, which has been completely overlooked. It used to be a wonderful community asset by the river. Five, the original plan showed male, female, and staff toilets and a baby change. These have been replaced by a single unisex one, which seems like a future excuse not to have a cafe at all. Six, the fact that it is now a convenience store negatively impacts the sustainability of the very long-standing shop next door. This may seem like a simple commercial issue rather than planning, but it will impact the sustainability of the Alding community as a whole and will lead to the loss of yet more community assets. These are not minor changes. There was clearly never any intention to follow these original plans, and therefore it is highly unlikely that there will be any intention to follow these. Though I am not naive enough to believe that a business should have a heart, unlike the pub that used to be there, I would at least expect integrity. There is no integrity here, nor any care for the integration in the community. That is also obvious by the complete disregard of the outside, now overgrown with weeds, the large pile of rubbish from the conversion by the front fence, and the sad sight of the children's play area left to rot there, and the fact that, ironically, older children are allowed to engage in an antisocial behaviour in that space without check. All of this suggests that any adherence to any condition, plan or otherwise, is not uppermost in the applicant's aims. As a layman, I assume that the purpose of a planning system is to examine a proposed plan, reject it where it's not appropriate, grant it where it is, and to hold the applicant to account for any variations to the approved plan. If someone can simply ignore the original plan and later apply to do what he or she has already done, it will surely send the wrong signal to anyone who makes similar plans to any change of use anywhere. For these reasons, on behalf of the many residents I speak for, I will encourage you not to approve these modified plans and to respect what was once a much-loved local asset. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Geraldine Brown, Parish.
Chairman, members, I would first like to quote from the HDA statement of the original permitted planning application. The proposal our clients have for the George Public House is to transform the facility into a restaurant, which will specialise in promoting local produce in the menu and also with a facility to sell local produce within the building. The project does not involve any alterations to the building structure, and it will only have an interior refurbishment to upgrade the interior design and facilities. The George Public House is designated as an important village asset and has sadly been in decline for a long period, and our clients are keen to see the building revitalised into a community beneficial facility again. The Alding Parish Council met with the applicant to discuss his proposals
And when the planning application was submitted, we spoke at length with Tony Ryan, planning officer, as to how we could ensure the use and appearance of the building were safeguarded into the future. Hence why conditions 2 and 6 attached to the permission were so important. So why are we here now? Because the applicant, 1, has completely ignored the planning permission he sought and was granted. 2, has demonstrably ignored the conditions that were attached to that permission, and 3, has made significant alterations to the structure of the building and external appearance. So we are left with another convenience store, which we do not need, and no restaurant bar that we sorely do need, as the Walnut Tree has now closed, leaving our larger village with no social amenities. The current proposal is, to coin a phrase, trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. We believe the applicant had no intention whatsoever of adhering to the planning permission, as the plans used for his licensing application were similar to those used for this amended application. The new colour coding of areas is misleading on the plans. We disagree that the floor space given over to retail in these amended plans is similar in size to that of the permitted plans, when there were no measurements on the permitted plans, and the toilet, bar and kitchen areas have been treated differently. The seating capacity has been halved. The premises are filthy. The grass has not been cut for over a year. There is rubbish and debris throughout the garden and car park, and there is vegetation growing adjacent to the buildings. The ground floor has been virtually gutted, including the removal of the stairs to the first floor, segregating the upstairs accommodation, which is now the subject of a further application for an HMO. The traditional wooden doors and frosted windows to the front of the building have been replaced with modern plain glass. The applicant has serious disregard for the rural location and the setting in the conservation area, and
Sorry, Councillor Brown, can I ask you to wrap up, please?
total disregard for planning. We would respectfully ask you, please, to refuse this application and enforce against non-compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Hannah Rushbridge for the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Hannah Rusbridge of Invicta Planning, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the applicant who owns the George at Yalding. Planning permission was granted in August 2023 for the change of use of the former public house, which closed in 2021, into a part retail, part restaurant with ancillary takeaway use. The planning permission included condition 6, which required the approved development to be set out in accordance with the approved floor plan. The reason for the imposition of the condition was to prevent the unrestricted use of the ground floor space, which could give rise to the harm, character and appearance and functioning of the surrounding area, and or the enjoyment of their properties by adjoining residential occupiers. This was imposed despite the previous lawful use of the premises as a public house. The changes which are the subject of this application would not normally require planning permission, were it not for the imposition of condition 6, which restricts alterations to the approved layout. This application only seeks to amend the approved ground floor layout to move the restaurant cafe use towards the front of the building and make other minor internal changes to reorganise the space. The resulting changes retain a similar 70-30 split between retail and restaurant cafe uses. There is no change of use proposed as part of this application, and the uses remain the same as previously approved. Whilst there has been local objection to the proposals, there is also a significant amount of support for the facilities our client has created. A significant amount of the objections are not material planning considerations. However, just to directly respond to some of the key points, when the premises was originally opened, there was a greater range of locally sourced products for sale. However, as with any food retail business, the range of products for sale has changed, reflecting local demand. There is still local produce for sale, however, in smaller amounts because there was not sufficient demand for the wider range. In relation to the rubbish, the shop has 2 large bins which are collected weekly. There are also bins within the car park, and our client strongly refutes that the rubbish is a result of their poor management. Our client runs other small stores, such as Heath Stores in Horseman Den, which does not experience the same issues and is managed in the same manner. The George is located in the heart of Yalding Village in a sustainable location, providing important facilities and services to local residents. The proposals allow for the retention and reuse of an existing commercial premises and are entirely in accordance with adopted local plan policies. For these reasons, I respectfully request that the members follow officer recommendations and grant permission for these proposals. I'd like to thank members for their time today and their consideration of the points I've made.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. I won't recover the points that were made really well by my chairman of my parish council and my local resident, but I mean, it all comes down to what's in a plan. And when we're talking about planning, I kind of think everything's in a plan. The plan was submitted, it was conditioned accordingly. There is planning permission for this site. We're not arguing over that. What the village was sold and planned for and worked really well to get that application through was absolutely not what was built. The internal stairs have been taken out, external stairs have been put on, and whilst I know that's not a material planning consideration because it's building regs, I still think it gives you a flavour of what's been going on with this development. Local produce, not sure. Racks and racks of convenience store type interior is what we've got here. I don't think there was any intention to really run the cafe. And so it's an incremental approach to this particular site. And that can happen anywhere, but we are within the conservation area of Yalding, and it is a non-designated heritage asset, and its status and its setting should be respected. Please spare a thought for my inbox the weekend that the external signage that was black with the backlit white writing that said Mr. Dan's takeaway went up, because it was the same weekend that I was suffering with bin emails, and I mean, I nearly just quit, to be honest. So, this is really what we're getting a flavour of for this application. There's a current new application in, which I know is not the subject to this, for a 10-bedroom HMO that is going to be on upstairs. So I really do look to the committee here. Imagine this in the middle of a conservation area. Imagine what was sold to the village. Imagine what they've got. I really think this should be refused, if not at least deferred until you have a look at the whole site, which would again include that 10-bedroom HMO upstairs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clear.
As you know, planning is my favourite committee to be on, so no one ever. But I'm looking at these two plans, and these aren't minor tweaks. They look like two completely different plans to me, these floor spaces, which may or may not be entail. I'm not particularly interested in what goes on in Osborn, to be quite honest. We're here dealing with this application. But I've had a look at the pictures, and I wasn't sure in the original application whether a takeaway was submitted. From what they're saying, it was going to be a cafe, and I sort of refer you to the comments I made earlier about people, adhering to conditions that are put in. From what I can see, that is basically your bog standard convenience store that could be in any high street, any side street in the area. Now, whether that's part of planning or not, I don't know. But I do like people to have some integrity and honesty when they come and put a planning application towards. If you wanted that, put in for that. Don't put in for something different and then go, well, we'll retrospectively. So I haven't a clue what bit it comes on. But I mean, I just think, we need to see some more integrity in some of these applications, because if I was living in Yalding, I'd be very, very angry, quite rightly so, to say we were promised one thing and we got another. Now, there's people who've been on this committee a lot more longer than me, Councillor Springett. But for me, I just think it's totally wrong to do what they've done. It's the sight of it, the pub, the outside looks like a dog's dinner. I'm sorry, it really does. And I would have thought of a more name that would have blended in, shall we say, rather than Mr. Dan's takeaway. But I'll leave it Rob to tell me where I'm going wrong on my comments, but that's my opinion on this at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So 2 seconds. I'm going to bring. Rob's got some questions as well. Actually, on the ground of this should be really retrospective on what we've heard today, rather than actual initial or amendment.
Yeah, I think what I heard from the objectors, if I could categorize it like that, didn't seem to align with what seems to be the planning application. So if we could just have absolute clarification on whether or not any of the proposals before us tonight are retrospective or not. That's the first question. But the second point of clarification is, as I understand it, Yalding Parish Council and others supported the original application because although they were losing their public house, which is obviously a meeting place, there was still going to be this restaurant use, perhaps cafe use. And as I understand it, condition 6 is proposing that the restaurant floor space changes. But I think we need to be absolutely clear on, is that a reduction in floor space, or is the redesign so significant that it's unlikely to be used as a restaurant? I'm emphasizing the restaurant use because obviously meat in restaurants are made. So it's still in sort of like broad terms then a kind of community use. Thanks.
Councillor Clear, I think you're going to come back with what?
Yeah, just because I want absolute clarity here. I can see them little squares with wiggles next to them. Are you telling me it's going to be a restaurant cafe with 1, 2, 3, 4 tables maximum in a takeaway? Because that's not going to be much of a community hub to go and sit in. And this is their plans. So I'm sorry, I see that as a significant reduction.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, also, I don't see in the report, it says application, so it's application for minor material amendments. There's nothing about retrospective. Okay, what else is going for that? Councillor Cox and then Paddy, and then Councillor Spring.
Thank you, Chair. I just really wanted to pick up on 2 points, please, and while we deliberate this. The firstly is about conservation areas, and I think it's really important where there are conservation areas, and I feel the same way as you all know about national landscapes, that if they're there to be preserved and respected. And that's really important. We either walk that walk or we just give up and go home and yeah. The second one is it's really tough making retail operations work in a rural environment. And so I get why the owner here is probably trying to flex the space so they can actually sort of make it work. Hopefully it's about making it viable rather than making it, hugely successful, those 2 different things. But we've got to be careful of the other store as well. We can't have one succeed and jeopardize another. And I know that's commercial reality. And I do believe that the locals who shop there will vote with their feet. But I just think we need to be mindful of that. And my third point is about scope creep. I'm very worried about scope creep. So, but the conservation one is my big one.
Councillor Cox. Councillor Whelan.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments, really. First of all, it's very concerning for me that this amount of community concern has come forward. It's clear that the people of Yalding are very upset in general about what has gone on in the past, and the comments from Yalding Parish Council, which is on our agenda pack, the original agenda pack, raised several issues which can be used against the application, as indeed the comments from the ward councillor. I think the items detailed in our agenda pack again in the National Planning Policy Framework, achievable sustainable development, decision making, building a strong competitive economy, achieving well-designed places, building a strong competitive economy, again, are all very valid points. I do find it deeply concerning that it's causing upset within the community. I know that's not a planning policy, but they've been well represented by the parish council. Sadly, because I don't like to turn down planning applications, but I'm considering voting against this.
So I will bring in councillors, but just going through this should be a retrospective application. Yeah, as we understand it. Also with the advertisement issue as well, to go with it, that wasn't granted in the previous application, that would need to be involved in this application to go with it. So I'm going to recommend deferral unless everyone wants to really carry on the actual debate.
I'd like to recommend refusal because we've now got an HMO application as well. So we've got other things, and I think we need to look at this building in the round. It's in a conservation area.
The HMO one, Councillor Spring, we have to take it as a separate application. We can't put any weight on that.
What I'm saying is that they're right. Okay. I was on licensing. The gentleman came to us. He wanted an alcohol license to serve drinks in the garden and sell to the public. He presented a different floor plan. So we've got 3 floor plans. They've taken the stairs out. They've now split off upstairs with a new application. I'm just really concerned we should be looking at this building in the whole. So I would recommend refusal and ask the applicant to come in for a pre-app meeting, tell us what he wants, be open and honest, and then we consult on that as a whole. So I recommend refusal.
Okay, just the officers are actually recommending that we actually defer it rather than refuse. So just to put it out there, it was Councillor Burke and then Councillor Harwood.
Thank you. I just wanted to raise the point where when you look at the map, you know, the size of the restaurant and the floor place is decreased from 31% to 29%. So it's getting smaller. And I would fear that over time it will continue to get smaller and those 4 seats will turn into 2 seats. I do not think it's a minor alteration by changing everything around. And like we said, the staircase is not a planning application, but if you're going to move stairs from the middle of a building, it's because you want to have a big open space to sell things, in my opinion. So I genuinely think at this point it is not relevant, and I would be considering voting against it as well.
Councillor Harwood.
Right, let's not prolong the agony. I move that we defer to get the details that are required, because to me, what's on the paper, as the case officer has said, there's nothing, retrospectives are perfectly permitted. This is compliant with policy, so therefore we can't refuse it. We're a regulatory committee. However, if some of the other issues where we have no detail are so, then that may put a different bearing on it. So therefore we cannot make a decision tonight. So therefore I move that we defer.
Yeah, I second it. And as part of that, when it comes back, can we have some up-to-date photographs of it, please? Because I don't believe that's an up-to-date photograph we're seeing.
So I do have a proposer and a seconder for deferral. Obviously, we did with the note that we need some up-to-date photos. Is there anything else we want to add to that for the officers to actually look at before we move to the vote? Okay. Right, so all in favour of deferring? Those against? Okay, that is deferred. Okay, councillors. Moving on to another one. Okay, this item was previously deferred. Okay, I'll move to the officer to introduce the Vale Nursing Home. Okay, thank you. Okay, so Peter May.
Thank you, Chairman. We wish to re-emphasise the following points of our objections, the supporting detail of which has been provided to each member of the committee earlier this week and should give you all cause to question the officer's recommendation. This is a redevelopment proposal of a brownfield site, which entails the conversion and change of use of a nursing home into flats, and there's nothing wrong with that. We understand the need to make good use of brownfield sites. However, this does not mean that the committee or the council officers can set aside all other considerations and planning policies. That is not what proper town planning and brownfield site redevelopment is all about. We do need more residential accommodation, but certainly not at any price. We accept the principle of what's being proposed, but certainly not the detail. It should not be a case of let's cram in as many flats as possible. Instead, the developers and the council should be asking what can reasonably be achieved. As part of the pre-application advice, the developers were advised that 11 flats would be too many. Unfortunately and unwisely, this advice has been ignored by the developers. Instead, it appears that they have decided to see how many flats they can get away with. They are doing this at the expense of the impact on the environment, which would cause significant harm to the character and appearance of the street scene and the general locality. It also ignores the impact this development would have on the existing residents. In particular, they are planning to destroy a significant feature brick wall and an existing attractive area of grassland by converting it into a large car park with hard standing. Ironically, even by doing this, they will still not provide enough parking spaces for the flats. This overdevelopment will make the already limited on-street parking even worse. Destroying the undeveloped land to provide car parking at the expense of amenity land is not the right way to go about things. It's simply wrong. Planning policy DM9 is a key policy consideration for this application. This prescribes that the conversion of existing buildings for residential use will be permitted when the following criteria are met. The proposal would fit unobtrusively with the existing building were it retained and the character of the street scene and its context. Traditional boundary treatment of an area is retained where feasible and reinforced. Sufficient parking would be achieved without diminishing the character of the street scene. It is quite clear that these criteria are not being met. Chairman, the council now has a significant number of green councillors and is supported by many members of the public who want to put environmental considerations and not the destruction of undeveloped land at the heart of decision making. This application is simply an example of too much being shoehorned into too little space. Therefore, we request permission be refused, the developers come back with a more appropriate and environmentally acceptable scheme. Any such scheme should have significantly fewer but larger apartments in keeping with the existing standard of properties in and around Osborn Place, that a site visit is undertaken prior to a final decision being made. This would go some way to validate the green credentials being espoused by the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. May. Okay, David Ellsworth.
Thank you. I'm David Ellsworth. I live at 1 Osborn Place for the last 45 years. Although closing a visually attractive, much needed, successful and profitable care home to provide a soulless block of flats with tarmac car park seems perverse to me, I do not object to a change of use per se. Most of the rear green areas have already been sold off and built on, but this would then destroy the remaining green frontage. The applicant is naturally trying to push the boundaries with planning to gain maximum financial benefit, but surely they should not be permitting such latitude in overdeveloping a site that was only extended to such a degree already under the auspices of being a care home. It should not be planning's job to actively assist an applicant to achieve his financial objectives, particularly one that has such a negative impact on its neighbours and the environment. I can't understand approving a scheme where even at first glance a novice like me found more than 20 areas of clear non-compliance with the council's own rules, local plans and other policies as detailed in the original objections. Planning chose to ignore or find excuses for why the previous much smaller car park scheme, which similarly included a 2-metre high hedge along its southwest boundary in the submitted plans, was refused by planning for causing significant harm to the character and appearance of the street scene and general locality and non-compliance with NPPF policies SB1 and DM1 of the local plan. Originally, a senior planning officer to this site said he considered that 11 was far too many apartments. This plan now convenes even more of the council's policies and detracts far more from the street scene. So how is this now considered acceptable? This plan only squeezes into 2 visitor spaces by removing existing residents' visitor spaces, leaving virtually no alternative parking. Our 1970s garages can only take the smallest cars, so almost all residents have to park on their drives and the visitors have to park on the roads. This would leave only room for 2 small cars for visitors to all existing 10 houses, plus any additional vehicles from the Vale. Despite contravening NPPF guidelines, rather than taking a balanced and credible view, planning chose to take at face value the developer's suggestion that parking is adequate for 11 flats, including 2 and 3 bedroom flats, which can house 32 people. Realistically, parking and pollution would be far, far worse. I posted an image on a road of 1-bed homes with their own off-road parking in nearby Downswood, which has a bus service, but typically shows all the additional cars and vans that frequently park on the roads and on the pavements. A similar situation in Osborn Place would be ecologically and socially devastating. Contrary to the inaccurate planning officer's report, the Vale does not enjoy good public transport to Maidstone and beyond, or even have a bus. It's not within reasonable distance of schools, doctors or dentists without a car. So we trust councillors will not be swayed by photoshops like this, which is totally false and misleading, or be prepared to accept biased interpretations of policies in the applicant's favour, but take into account how it realistically would devastate this small, quiet cul-de-sac. I would urge you to refuse this application in its present form, and at the least require the applicant to reduce the size to a reasonable scale that suits the immediate environment, as I believe planning should have already done in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Mr. Hadley for the applicant.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. I was at the last committee meeting where this application was deferred, and I listened to the discussions of members at that time, and we worked on the reasons for the deferral accordingly that I'll go through with you now. As requested, both the applicant's viability consultant report and the council's own viability consultant report have been made publicly available since the last meeting. The council's assessor has confirmed that planning permission can be granted without a requirement to provide affordable housing, and this process has been robust and transparent. In terms of parking provision, I think it's important to note that the application is supported by the Harbours Authority. The ones that can confirm their support for the level of parking. Each flat would have its own parking space, and there'll be 2 visitor spaces as well. I remember the last planning committee, the idea of asking for a Section 106 agreement that restrict flat owners from having parking space was tabled. This can sometimes be used in town centres where a site might be surrounded by controlled parking zones, where residents with such a restriction simply can't park elsewhere. This is not the case here. An agreement of this kind would likely only result in future flat owners with such a legal restriction on parking on surrounding roads that are not restricted, exacerbate any existing issues with on-street parking in the area. Councillors wanted to seek assurance that the development would have proper drainage. I think it was Councillor Harwood, you raised a few points last time round. I then, the next day, got in touch with drainage specialists, flood risk specialists at Harrington's Consulting. You probably know they commissioned a full service water drainage strategy, which has been submitted to the council. This adopts a sustainable drainage design, would ensure no runoff to the highway, and utilises permeable surface water drainage for the areas of hard standing. Although the application was submitted prior to the adoption of biodiversity net gain legislation, members wanted to see details of biodiversity enhancements. We therefore provided a biodiversity enhancement plan showing provision of bat bricks, bird boxes, bee hotel, log piles, and all existing trees to be retained. If any further details of that, the applicant was to accept a condition if anything additional is required. The application was accompanied by an energy statement. Although members want to see what air sustainable features will be introduced, they want to see the detail. Consistent with the energy statement, the sustainability site plan has therefore been produced detailing electric charge points, provision of air source heat pumps and solar panels. You see that solar panelling would be only provided on the inner roof slopes of the existing building and not on the prominent roof slopes facing the street scene in order to preserve the character of the area. We've also enhanced the landscaping around the parking area, as is illustrated by the landscaping plan provided in the CGI that indicatively shows what this would look like. A mature evergreen hedgerow at the front of the site would help screen the parking, but it also wouldn't block views of the building itself, which is an attractive building that we want to retain views of. We are aware that officers were talking about additional tree planting, and if members would like a condition to require additional tree planting, my client, the applicant, would have no objection to that. I hope, therefore, that members can agree that we've done as asked. and can support the application. And as I say, all the dwellings proposed here comply with the nationally described space standards. They would be afforded their own an acceptable degree outlook, as the officers confirm, and amenity space. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Springett first, because you're the board member, and then Councillor Cleater.
Thank you. I've got no objection in principle of this being converted into flats. I'm sad about the loss of the wall, but I don't think that can be helped. I am disappointed that the applicant has not listened on parking. I'm very sorry. Parking is going to be challenging. 11 flats with 1 space each and 2 for visitors. Now, I know there's nothing, we can't refuse it on that, because KCC, as usual, and in whom I have no faith whatsoever, and I'll say that in the public record, have not objected. I disagree that they're supporting it. They haven't objected, technically. But I'm afraid this will be a nightmare with parking, but unfortunately there's nothing we can do about that. I'm just really disappointed the applicant didn't listen and look at coming with some alternative resolution. As a ward member, I know in the next year I'm going to be inundated with requests for residents parking bays, double yellow lines, stopping the parking on the pavements, and we're just going to end up approving a problem. So I personally cannot support the application, but I can't also provide you with a decent reason for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Springett. Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Chair. But sorry. No, sorry, can I just make the contribution, please? Thank you. Because I didn't interrupt you, okay? And I'm actually being quite supportive of you. I love the CGI, because you tell me when Wellington Streets ever look like that. There's no HGVs, there's no traffic jams, there's no L's in the roads. So please, I'm sure the people of Leeds Langley would love a lovely CGI bit like that. One of my issues is, and I know we can't complain about the conversion, but I've sat listening in other planning committees where we were told you have to approve this because we need more care beds in Maidstone. So here we are, we have a care home that we're going to convert into HMOs. I think 10's too much. I refer you to the previous meeting where we had another discussion about another HMO. If you think there's only going to be 1 car per house, I'll give you £1 million. I haven't got it yet, but I mean, I'll give you £1 million. The fact is that is a quiet area. The landscaping, it's going to be a nightmare. Kent County Council are a disgrace because that's their standard answer. We've got no objections. I don't suppose they've even looked, to be quite honest, because if they had, there is no bus service down there. You've got to walk all the way down the hill to Downswood to catch one, or all the way up to Senacre to catch the other. So where they got this, it's served by good public transport. I don't know, because it isn't. It's like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro getting up that hill. You're a bit better on the way down. We've also got traffic chaos now because Kent County Council, in its wisdom, have put traffic lights at the bottom. I'm with you. You're going to tell me there's no legal reason I can refuse this, but I'd quite like some common sense in planning, to be quite honest, because this isn't going to help anyone there. It's a little quiet cul-de-sac. I know, because I had trouble parking there when I was leafleting in a council election. And it is going to totally change the area, the street scene. And if KCC think you're going to be able to pull out of that road safely, then I've got a gold mine to give you in Wales. So I'm just totally frustrated, like you, Councillor Springett, because this is on the edge of our areas, and you and I know what the reality is, and it's certainly not as described in that or in the description that the applicants put in.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm just going to bring Rob Jarman back in.
In terms of car parking, obviously Kent County Council set out parking standards some time ago. I think it's about 20 years ago. And Maidstone Borough Council has decided to take them on board, most recently by adopting a development plan in March 2024. But it is a material planning consideration. Car parking always is. I mean, there's a strong argument to say there's no functional reason for consulting KCC highways on parking because the standards are the standards. And as I understand it, please correct me, Francis, there's a deficit of 3 spaces, and the planner's argument is that's okay because it's in a sustainable location. We don't define in the development plan what a sustainable location is. And again, I do understand the point about there is a need for care accommodation, so it sounds counterintuitive to allow the loss of care accommodation. However, again, there is no policy protecting care accommodation. So, but you could, I don't advocate this at all, but you could legally refuse this. Yeah, I just want to make that absolutely clear. But you would have to argue that the non-alignment with the standards, i.e. the deficit of 3, would lead to harm in terms of vehicular pedestrian conflict.
Councillor Jeffreys and yourself, Councillor Ridden.
Right. Crikey, where do I start? Just to come back on Mr. May sort of pointed out when he spoke about Green councillors on here. Obviously, this is a regulatory committee, and I would love to vote on my principles, but we've got to vote on planning policy that's in front of us, and most of us didn't write that planning policy, so we are bound by very different rules on this committee. I'm interested. I'm very interested in the care bed situation. Kent County Council's published policy says they need fewer beds. So therefore, converting this into accommodation is probably okay. I'm not convinced KCC is right, but that is their view, and I haven't seen a later that strategy was from 2021. I think I haven't seen a newer one. So I'm not really swayed either way on the care beds need bits, because I'm not sure I believe KCC, but hey, they're the experts. The parking bit, I note Rob's comments about we could refuse it for the sake of 3 spaces. I kind of don't think that's going to wash it with the inspector somehow. It doesn't feel material enough, and I certainly I certainly find it very difficult to argue for more parking. Again, not trying to bring my own ethics into this, but you know, it kind of feels the wrong thing to refuse it on somehow. It's not. It doesn't feel material enough for me. So I remain still a little bit undecided, but I'm kind of tending towards to accepting this.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I am a little bit split on this, but I think, having listened to my colleagues, the only, as I see it, planning policy we could refuse it on is possibly street scene, sustainable development, because there's no public transport in that area, as I understand it. I was going to say over intensification to try and get round the original comments about the parking, but Rob has cleared that up and given us an opportunity, if we wish to refuse it, as car parking, as possibly one legal reason. I do think the street scene is significantly affected with it, and I think the 3 parking spaces I think it's probably short by about 10 or 15 parking spaces, and we all know that there'll be parking all around the roads and around the cul-de-sac. So I'm leaning towards refusing it, but I'm happy to listen to everyone else's views.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I think, like everybody, the loss of the wall and the loss of the lawns is not going to improve the street scene, and every application we've had tonight, none of them have improved the street scene. Look at Maidstone now, look at it 30 years ago, then you can see things aren't getting better. However, this application is policy compliant. We deferred for some set reasons. We were given either clarity on those reasons for deferral, or there were changes made to the application. As has been pointed out by virtually everybody who's spoken, there are no grounds for refusal, and we can sit here all night saying we don't like it, but frankly, we're a regulatory committee that is governed by the development plan, and the development plan says it's okay. So therefore, to try and lance the boil, I'll move that we do grant permission as per the papers. However, with one change, which I think is really important. We managed through negotiation to achieve more landscaping, to enclose the site a little bit more, despite the loss of the lawns and so on, and to make up for the loss of the wall. However, we only have a 5-year replacement policy in here, which means that after 5 years, the whole lot could be taken out, and the residents get the full view of all the parked cars, the tarmac, and everything else. So therefore, I recommend that the circumstances would require a 10-year replacement condition, and then the residents can keep a beady eye on it. And if anything happens to that landscaping, enforcement can come down on the site operator to ensure replacement. And that will mean that the landscape management plan that accompanies it would have to become a 10-year, not a 5-year landscape management plan, to ensure that we do allow that to mature. And then maybe when it's coming up to 10 years, we need to look at a TPO on it. But for at least the kind of short term, I think that is the best we can do as a committee with the tools that we have at our fingertips.
Okay, thank you. Is that as per the urgent update as well?
Yep, but up to 10 for the landscape and the replacement and the plan.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Cox and then Jeffries.
Thank you. I have 2 points. My first one isn't a planning point, but actually I think if I was behind this scheme, I'd be really worried that we're only making 1.49% return. To be honest, to go through all this hard work, you may as well just stick your money in Treasury and get 3 times as much. So something doesn't quite add up for that for me. My second point is on parking, of course. And it's really a request whether or not there's anything we can do if this is permitted, if there's anything that could be done to protect the rights of parking for existing residents. And maybe that's not a planning matter, but out of courtesy, I would hope that the developers would consider that, because I think it's important to get on with your neighbours in a development like this.
I think we can put that as an informative, but that's about it for the request to work with the neighbours for parking.
Sorry, say that again, Councillor Wilby.
Yeah, sometimes in sort of like areas which are, congested in terms of not enough capacity on street, we have used sort of Grampian conditions to get traffic regulation orders, but I don't think we're in that sphere here. Yeah, I was just going to pick up on a couple of detailed points, actually. I suggest we make it clear in condition 7B that what we want is a double staggered native hedgerow. We don't actually say double staggered. And secondly, I do think I was here yesterday. It's an incredibly prominent site, actually. Can I just be clear on where the tree planting would take place? Would it be on the Willingdon Street frontage?
Thank you, Rob. We've had discussions with the applicant, and the tree planting is going to take place along the frontage as requested by members.
Along Willingdon Street frontage?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'd agree then with Councillor Harwood, and I do think, yeah, I'll have a word with the landscape team, but I do think it's incredibly prominent, and it is the sort of area where we could serve a TPO actually.
TPO at the point of planning, yes.
At the point of planting.
Planting, yeah. Okay. Councillor Jeffries and Councillor Springer.
Yeah, I was just going to second Councillor Harwood's motion. I'm really pleased that the trees are going to be at the front. Trees versus wall, I go for trees anytime, but I'm happy to second Councillor Harwood's proposal.
Councillor Springett, I'll come back to you, Councillor, and then we'll go to the vote.
I've listened quite carefully to what Rob said, actually. Sadly, I don't think we can refuse it on parking because it will go to appeal and they'll say, well, the Highways Authority didn't object. But you made an interesting comment, Mr. Jarman. You said, our standards are the same, so we don't necessarily have to consult highways. So I'm going to make a rather drastic proposal that doesn't necessarily relate to this application. Unless the law requires us on all planning applications or small planning applications to consult the Highways Authority, that we cease consulting the Highways Authority and use the standards within our own policy. That then means that at no stage in the future can a planning inspector say, well, the Highways Authority didn't object, because we know they don't look at half of them. They say it's not big enough for us to look at. So if we don't need by law to consult them, can I propose that we consider not consulting them on smaller applications so that the excuse of they didn't object is not thrown back at us?
I think the issue we have in our own local plan development and is we quote the KCC allocations. So you don't have to we don't have to get comments on it and don't have to send it to them, but it's exactly the same. So our own standard is exactly the same because we've quoted KCC standard within our local plan.
But with respect, Mr. Jarman just said we have a deficit of 3. So somewhere in that is a bit. I'm very confused. If we have a deficit of 3, I just need a bit of a clarification on that.
So as per KCC standards, that we actually have a deficit of 3 parking spaces, but the applicant within the application obviously is quoted it's a sustainable location. We don't say what is a sustainable location within our local plan. So we're a bit scuppered on that. So we'd have to argue at appeal that it's not sustainable. And obviously they will argue that it is. And for 3 parking spaces, like has been pointed out, I think we're going to be a bit of an issue, but I'll let you come back now.
Quickly, I'd like to make a proposal to the Cabinet Member for Planning that we urgently look at creating a policy which describes what a sustainable location is. Thank you.
We're getting into general points, but I believe that in February of this calendar year, there was a proposal to look at parking standards as a result of concerns around HMO applications. I think it is already an outstanding piece of work, albeit on the back of HMO proposals, but it all revolves around parking standards, as the chairman said, sustainability, because the parking standards that we have, if I can put it this way, copied from Kent County Council are not minima, they're maxima. So, and inspectors have said this, because we don't define, as you've said, Councillor Springett, what a sustainable location is. To exaggerate the point, we're open to inspectors' interpretation of what is sustainable. I know that on the Charles Street appeal, perhaps that's a bad example. The inspector said something like, it's not far from the town centre, so I think it's sustainable. So I think an inspector could say something similar here.
Okay, Councillor Harwood, and then we'll go to the vote.
Just developing Mr. Jarman's point around he will speak to his landscape colleagues. I'm a bit concerned that condition 7, it's a little bit eccentric. It's still got Councillor Atkinson's thing about sycamore trees on it, which just seems very strange to me to put into a condition in like, but it also talks quite rightly about the landscaping scheme should follow our landscape character guidance. And then it later on talks about the hedging and describes a hedge on the chalk where, yeah, clearly this is on the green sand. So we need to ensure it's the right page out of the landscape character assessment guidance. So there's not one species palette. I mean, so therefore we shouldn't put in, you know, maybe if it's on the top of the downs, this would work. But but it keeps being said, and I think again we need to look at the standard conditions just to make sure that they're fully up to date and appropriate. And I know that landscape colleagues are kind of consulting on some kind of do's and don'ts issues, but I think one of the things we need to get right is our conditions if we're going to have prospering landscaping schemes. But yeah, well, let's move to the vote now. So, but I think we should perhaps give delegated powers for condition 7 to be appropriately amended.
Councillor Jeffries, is that okay with you? Okay. In that case, we'll move to the vote. So, all in favour? Those in favour? Those against? 3 against. Those abstaining? 1 abstain. That is approved. Okay, almost there, councillors. Moving on. I will have the officers mail you about how to do that. Okay, to go with it. So, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Miss. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, Miss Hadley. Thank you. Okay. Councillors, we all good to go? What do you want? Yeah? Councillors? No, we're moving on. So could the officer please introduce the gables?
Thank you. So the application tonight is at Warren Street in Lenham and seeks the demolition of existing outbuildings on site and the erection of a detached dwelling and garage along with associated works. In policy terms, the application site is located in the countryside and within the Kent Downs National Landscape. Warren Street consists of a collection of dwellings on large plots, a public house and a cluster of agricultural buildings at Blue House Farm. The loose grouping of the dwellings and the large plots on which they sit results in the area having a spacious and rural character that reflects the countryside location. So the National Landscapes, the A and B management plan, identifies that the designated area comprises of diverse special characteristics, including expansive open plateaus, narrow lanes, and a modern agricultural landscape. All of these features can be seen in the area surrounding the application site. So the proposed dwelling is divided into 3 sections with gabled roof forms. The applicant describes this as a tripartite approach. The applicant sets out that this is used to break up the mass of the building and references the repeating gables which are found in the local vernacular. Each of the 3 sections of the building uses a different material palette. The applicant sets out that the use of the different materials in each section of the building enables the transition from an agricultural to residential material palette. So, for example, the northern section uses flint vertical timber cladding and standing seam metal. The southern section, on the other hand, is residential in character and a warmer tone when compared with the agricultural elements of the building. So the dwelling would be sunk into the ground, as it's pictured, to reduce the visual impacts of the development with an extensive landscaping scheme, which in time would further screen the proposed dwelling. So the proposal seeks a new build dwelling in the countryside. A new dwelling in the countryside is contrary to the local plan review spatial strategy that directs new development to existing designated settlements on the grounds of sustainability. The starting point for assessment of applications in the countryside is a local plan policy SP9. The policy states that development proposals in the countryside will not be permitted unless they accord with other policies in the plan and will not result in significant harm to the rural character and appearance of the area. The theme of the local plan review policies is to restrain and restrict development in the countryside. And on this basis, unless there is a very exceptional circumstance, new buildings in the countryside are generally refused. So the applicant has pointed to 3 paragraphs of the MPPF, which offer support for new residential dwellings. Paragraphs 84, 138 and 139. Paragraphs 138 and 139 do not specifically relate to countryside development, but we'll get onto them later. So paragraph 84 relates to isolated homes and has the highest standard of architectural design. If you don't consider this application as isolated or is that high of a design bar. So it does not benefit from consideration under paragraph 84. Paragraph 138 refers to how the LPA should have regard to the outcome of design panels and the outcome from these processes. Paragraph 139 refers to poorly designed development being refused and states that conversely, significant weight should be given to development which reflects local design policies and or innovative designs which promote high levels of sustainability or help raise the standard of design more generally in the area, so long as they fit in with the overall form and layout of their surroundings. So to focus on innovation and raising design standards. So for example, zero carbon dwellings once would have been considered innovative. These were built and now all dwellings should be zero carbon ideally. So the design bar has been raised and now what is innovative is an even higher standard, just for example. So I've got some other examples of exceptional dwellings. These are under paragraph 84, which is the highest design bar, but I just include them just to demonstrate that there are very different approaches to this type of application or development, should I say. So for example, we have some that are quite restrained in approach, some that are more outlandish, and some that are hidden, but they don't necessarily need to be hidden to be acceptable. But all these dwellings, they do look good, but the design is not entirely about the development itself, or the design itself, sorry. So for example, this one, Underhill House, which was built in 2010, was a derelict 300-year-old stone structure situated in a very prominent location in an area of outstanding natural beauty, not in Kent, and involved the restoration and conservation of this structure into an office and then slotting the dwelling underneath it. Others involve significant landscape restoration and related economic uses. So the applicant has commissioned a design review panel to consider the application, and their feedback is a material consideration. While this has been considered, we do not consider this to be an exceptional design or exceptional circumstance. The paragraphs 138 and 139 specifically refer to outstanding and innovative design, and it is concluded that the current proposal does not meet this extremely high bar in this location. If we sort of break this down, the proposal involves engineering works to sink the dwelling into the ground and then would establish landscaping and biodiversity enhancements around the site. The dwelling is well considered and it does reflect the materials and form of what surrounding development there is, but all development needs to reflect the character and appearance of of its surroundings. So this isn't innovative or outstanding in its own right. This design approach could easily be replicated on other sites in the countryside, so it's not unique, innovative, or outstanding. The site is in the the Kent Downs National Landscape, and great weight should be given to the conservation and enhancement of the Kent Downs National Landscape. So the duty on the council in this circumstance is to further the purpose of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of the area. So it is concluded that the proposal fails to meet this requirement of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of the Kent Downs National Landscape, nor is it in compliance with national planning policies or the local plan review. As such, it's recommended that the application be refused on the grounds in the officer report. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully it will aid discussion, but to be direct, there was a previous appeal here, which this council won. So that's a strong material consideration. But perhaps more to the point, I think it was in December of last year, it wasn't just a change of name from areas of outstanding natural beauty to national landscapes. There was a new legal duty imposed on those areas, and it's now to conserve and enhance. And then lastly, but probably the most important point, is there are no local planning policies to support this, because normally precedent is a weak argument, but in my experience, everybody quite rightly wants a house in the countryside, but we all cherish the countryside. I do, because that's why I'm a town planner. So it's a very, very high bar. So to quote from paragraph 84 of the National Planning Policy Framework, it sets that very high bar, and I'll quote paragraph 84E, to be acceptable, the design is of exceptional quality. To me, exceptional means 10 out of 10. Doesn't mean 7 out of 10. And it actually qualifies what exceptional quality means. It states, is truly outstanding. To me, outstanding is touching that ceiling. I'm not saying it's bad design. I think one could say it's a good design, but I'm of the opinion, for design reasons, architectural reasons, that is not outstanding. And it's in a national landscape, and therefore I think it should be refused.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jarman.
Sorry.
Okay, Councillor Alistair Walmsley for the parish on the virtual.
Chairman, thank you for the opportunity of addressing the committee this evening. For any new committee members, let me introduce myself as Deputy Parish Council Chairman and Chairman of the Small Parish Planning Committee. I find myself tonight in the unusual position of disagreeing with the Planning Officer's recommendation that this application should not be allowed to proceed. In the Lenham Neighbourhood Plan, we are opposed to planning approvals in the rural area outside the Lenham built area, where this would effectively lead to small estates, or indeed large developments, stuck randomly and unsustainably in the rural area. However, this is decidedly not the case with this application. In this case, we have an application by a disabled person to build a purpose-built single-level bungalow on the site of an existing tumble-down structure. The bungalow will be shielded and not seen from the roadway or a nearby footpath, which is at odds with the planning officer's contention that this would have a significantly harmful effect on the rural character of this area. I think it's important that we distinguish between multiple housing development and the replacement of an existing tumble-down structure by an improved building. Otherwise, we are in danger of allowing the rural environment to be degraded. And I think that's a very important point. We must allow maintenance in the rural area such that it does not become degraded over a period of time. I'd also like to point out the contrariness of the stand taken by the planning officer and the decision taken at Blue House Farm, just opposite on the lane, where the Blue House Farm applicant was granted permission to tear down existing farm buildings and replace them with 6 estate-type houses. This is indeed the sort of development which should have been turned down by MBC as detailed in the Lanham Neighbourhood Plan. This development at Blue House Farm is indeed contrary to the rural character of the area, as per the contention of the planning officer for the Gables bungalow and the relevant clauses of the Lanham Neighbourhood Plan. In the context of the approval given across the lane to Blue House Farm, this refusal for the Gables is quite churlish and will lead to a degradation of the rural environment.
Could you please wrap up, Councillor?
To existing structures are to be allowed. A level of consistency and pragmatism in planning
Sorry,
decisions.
Councillor, can you please wrap up?
I have finished.
Thank you. Okay, Mark Brucey, the applicant.
Good evening, members. It is important to understand that this application has evolved through meticulous attention to detail. We fully understand the high bar, involving a study into the site and its surrounding designated landscape. The proposals have been developed by an architect who specialises in the design of exceptional homes. Only last week, Hawkes Architecture's first project, which is also in the Maidstone Borough, formed the centrepiece celebrating the 25th anniversary of Grand Designs. These proposals have benefited from a diligent pre-application consultation process with your officers, and importantly, the Kent Downs National Landscape team, resulting in no objection from them, which is no mean feat for a proposal for a new dwelling within the national landscape. It is therefore disappointing that one of the proposed reasons for refusal relates to impact on the national landscape, despite the officers at the body whose sole planning purpose is to seek the conservation and enhancement of the landscape, raising no objection. Importantly, also, is the input from an independent design review panel. Indeed, it was your officers who requested that we refer the proposals back to the DRP, stating that, and I quote, "If we eventually get confirmation from the design review panel that it meets the NPPF tests, then significant weight should be given to it when justifying approval." The DRP did just that, concluding that the scheme was of exceptional quality in its design and that it forms an entirely appropriate response to this particular site. They confirmed that the proposal does meet the policy requirements of paragraph 139. Now, whilst any individual's response to design can be considered subjective, every step of the design process can be assessed objectively. The DRP were able to objectively scrutinise and confirm that the exceptional high-quality design of the house and enhancements to its setting. On this basis, in making a decision on this application, it is clear that significant weight should be given to the outstanding design. The applicants, Claire, Jane and Carl, have lived in Warren Street for over 20 years. They have committed significant resources to this application, and their tireless efforts have resulted in not a single objection. Instead, we have an application which only has letters of support. Now, although personal circumstances are not a planning consideration, it is entirely relevant to understand that these proposals are unique to the applicants to meet the needs of Carl as an ex-serviceman. As such, there should be no fear at all that granting planning permission for this proposal will set any sort of precedent. Finally, I do not consider that the officer's report provides sufficient justification as to why they are now recommending refusal, contrary to the position earlier in the year when they asked us to go back to the DRP. As such, I respectfully request that you do apply significant weight to the design, positively consider these exceptional and entirely unique proposals, and resolve to grant planning permission for a house that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sams?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. This application has been planned to an incredibly high standard in every way. There's been great concern shown for ecological, environmental, biodiversity, landscape, light pollution, all have been considered and fully addressed. I'm concerned that the no objection from the well-respected and recognised Kent Downs National Landscape Team is not in your papers. It does not say no objection. That is a major point. There is also the fact that the design review panel are satisfied that paragraph 139 of the NPPF criteria has been met, and significant weight must be given to this. The proposal has been designed wheelchair accessible and has a gym for therapy and rehabilitation. This is essential for Carl, who's said before, has spent 24 years in the military. This has taken a toll upon his body, already necessitating 4 hip replacements. Personal circumstances are the core reason for this application. It is an exceptional house for an exceptional person. It's situated in an exceptional area and surroundings. I believe that it enhances those surroundings and not harms them. This council recently gave the freedom of the borough to the Royal British Legion, recognising the sacrifice of our servicemen and women. I think this should be considered. So we have no objection from the Kent Downs National Landscape Team. We have no objection from KCC Ecology, KCC Archaeology, KCC Highways, and we also have the support from the Design Review Panel. It's a building which reflects a high standard of design and it enhances the immediate setting. Please vote to recommend this proposal to allow Carl and Jane to build and live in their exceptionally designed and future-proof home. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Sams. I'm just going to ask Rob to come in just to explain what the design review panel actually is.
I've never dealt with them before. I've dealt with Design Southeast, and it's what I call a co-production process. It's the architect who explains the sort of narrative, and in my experience gives about 5 options, and then explains why it was concluded to go for either one option or a hybrid of say 2 and 3. But if you like, as I said, it's a co-production where I'm part of the review. I'm asked questions by the panel. William can correct me. My understanding is that the architect or designer went to this panel, they opined, and they just sent us their comments. To me, that's not a review because the local planning authority weren't present. And I'd like to think that we do have a part to play in the review of design. So I'm afraid to say that a lot of what I've heard is a sort of self-proclamation that it's a good design. I get that there's local support, but I draw members back to high standards in architecture. And I haven't heard people saying, I think it's an outstanding design because of X, Y, Z. I've just heard a generalization. It's great design.
Okay, Councillor Cox is ward member, then Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies, I'm going to have a number of points, but bear with me. So the first one, I'm really pleased to see the Council's consideration of its obligation, which is to actively protect the North Downs or national landscapes. And just for anybody who missed the nuance there, that's a new piece of legislation that came into effect in March 24. when it became a national landscape. So there's a bit of a step change there. One point of clarification, there's no dwelling on this site at all at the moment. Okay, thank you. What I did like when I saw, we might need to go back one of the photos so we can get more of the landscapey shot, maybe or more, that one, is I liked the way that the triple gables reflected the barns that were on the other side of the road, and I thought that was very sympathetic. I can't see from the elevation shots what the development, if we go forward the other way again to the one we were on, what they would look like from the other side, which is where they're submerged, the right word? You know what I mean? They're built underneath the bank, aren't they? Right. So I don't know what the technical term is, but I'd like to see what it looks like from that side. And I think that's clever, and I think that's good. I've got 2 points. One is a point of concern and probably a condition, which is whether the way it appears with the three gables is whether there's any possibility in future they could be split into separate accommodation. And I think that would undermine its proposition, overall proposition. It does sit within an existing hamlet of Warren Street, which I think is good. It's not as if it's in the middle of nowhere, which makes it supportive for me. My final point, I promise, is a design point, which is, and I'm a big advocate of the Kent Downs, as you all know, and very protective of them. I don't like the use of render in a national landscape. It's not a material that you'd see naturally. It's a 2020s thing where we're getting more and more rendered houses. And I think if the materials that were being used were more consistent with the natural materials you'd find in the landscape, then I think it would, it would be highly acceptable. So I'm on the fence at the moment, just in terms of my recommendation. But if we could get some amendments to materials and then get a sort of like a visual of the other elevation, I think that would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Cleaver.
Thank you, Chair. My query is regarding the pictures on 329, because I'm seeing, is that cat racing, Area 51 distribution, inspired interiors Kent, and Sarah's Oh So Pretty Aesthetics. So, although it's in that area of natural route, there seems to be an awful lot of businesses there, and I wondered whether they've had all these conditions put on them. You know, and whether they are outstanding and exceptional, because I doubt it very much, to be quite honest. So I would like to have seen more photographs of that. And I'm looking there, and that looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 sort of sheds, barns, industrial areas. You know, so my eyesight's terrible on a good day. I'm probably like you. If the right materials are used, I like the gables as well. I thought that was very much in keeping. Then with the right materials, I'm minded to agree, to be quite honest, because although it's in an area of outstanding beauty and the northern area, there's an awful lot of semi-industrial stuff going on there as well. So that's my opinion.
Tony, then Councillor Springett.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. You know, I understand all of the context, but an awful lot of what I've heard are not planning matters. And we, as a planning committee, as a regulatory committee, have got a very high bar to get over if we're going to allow development essentially on undeveloped sites in the national landscape. Those very tight conditions are there for a reason, because otherwise we would get a proliferation of such schemes, because there's a lot of personal circumstances, but the countryside is still protected for its own right, and the national landscape is protected even more. So I am a little bit concerned that this looks like a fairly normal house to me, but with a metal roof, and it's a greenfield site, so the land values and everything else are affected. And And I cannot currently see that this is in line with policy. And I think it's a slippery slope for this committee to go outside of policy in the national landscape. I'll leave it at that, but I think frankly I've got to move refusal because I just, it's so contrary to policy. But you know, seeing as I'm supposed to be in charge of policy, I can't really go outside it.
Okay, Councillor Springer, as you already indicated.
Thank you, and I'd like to second that proposal for refusal. Last night, this council was looking to protect the Greensand Ridge as a national landscape, and we were being asked to upgrade our landscapes of local value to national landscapes to protect them from development. So if we're going to go against that, then you need to picture 10 or 12 of these fantastic designs all coming forward in the view from the Greensand Ridge, because you're setting a precedent. It's so dangerous. I'd love to build my own house. I've always wanted to build my own house. And I looked at the setting of this, and just down the road, there were some interesting little plots on the corner. So if this goes ahead, you might find me approaching the landowner saying, actually, I'd like to buy a plot because they approved that one up there and I'm going to have an exceptional design and I'll come up with a really good reason. I think it's really dangerous because it is contrary to policy. I'm very sorry, and I accept the applicants want to build their dream house in this plot, but everybody would like to build their dream house in a nice plot in a national landscape. I just think it's contrary to policy and it would be a very, very dangerous move to approve it. So I second the refusal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Paddy.
Thank you, Chair. I'd fully support what Councillor Harwood and Councillor Springer have said. We've also got a strong recommendation from our officers. As Councillor Springer said, it is a slippery slope. If we start approving this type of thing, it sets precedents and we could spoil the whole borough. So I'm very concerned about the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? No, that's Jeffries.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to pick up on the exceptional quality, outstanding design point. I mean, I personally think within the context of the village, the hamlet there, this is outstanding. It is exceptional. It's an awful lot better than most of the stuff around it, from what I can see in the photographs. It is, but it's not probably exceptional in its own right, if in isolation. I'm puzzled as to why the Kent Downs AOB people, sorry, Kent Downs National Landscape Team, provided no objection, given the NPPF stuff, and that kind of, in itself, I find it leads me to think that this is probably just about okay, but I am I think if this came back with a truly exceptional design that was not just exceptional within Warren Street, I'd probably be voting yes, but it's a tough one otherwise, and I'm probably going to have to say no.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think as well, as you pointed out, the new change in regulations, that is what just tipped this over the edge to refusal. Unfortunately, probably if it could come in last year, we'd have probably be sitting here on a different kind of.
Yeah, I think Councillor Jeffries has made a very good point. You know, obviously, I'm quoting from national policy, so it's exceptional in national terms.
Okay. We have a proposer, we have a seconder to move what's on the papers. All those for? Okay, 7-4. Those against? 1 against. Those abstaining? 4 abstaining. That is refused. Okay. No. But I'm gonna.
We're looking.
Okay. I can assure you, the planning officer is going to look into that, and unfortunately, as the officers actually pointed out,
Wait, sorry.
okay, we'll take that on board, and the officers will look into that. Okay, thank you. Moving on then. Councillor Springett, before we actually do move to the appeal decisions, Councillor Springett. Councillor Springett, did you want to put a recommendation towards the cabinet member about what actually a strategy about what is sustainable?
Sustainable, yes. I would like to suggest that we ask the cabinet member for planning to establish policy wording to determine what is classed as sustainable development, to set the parameters for what is classed as sustainable development, which
and an area map to actually highlight what
potentially, yes, but does that include bus routes, public transport, etc., walking, cycling routes? What would determine what is classed as sustainable development? Thank you.
Yeah, so I understand as councillors probably know, I think every London borough sort of has an alignment between their parking standards and what are called petal zones, and it's mainly based on proximity to underground stations in central London, but in sort of outer London, sort of high frequency bus routes. In fact, in Dartford, their parking standards are based on proximity to bus stops along fast track. So, you know, it can be done.
Okay, I'm happy to second that. Councillor Harwood, quickly.
I'll say, if I ever find out what's going in the living environment DPD, then maybe it's in there. But I keep sending lists. It's not in there, is it? Have you seen it? No. What? So, talk about. You know.
Okay, is that agreed, members? Okay, thank you. Okay, appeal decisions.
Well, as you would say, Chairman, unlike Cardiff City, 6 out of 6.
Do council have any questions on the appeal decisions? No?
Chair, I'd just like to thank our officers and the committee. We've had 2 heavy weeks of planning, so well done, everyone.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you for your patience.
You buying the drinks, Paddy?
And on that note, bring the meeting to a close. Thank you.
Thank you very much.